So in 2017, I did this thing where I contacted the Supreme Court and I let them know that in lieu of anything that appeared to be remotely competent executive leadership, and in the face of what were serious, I mean, completely inexcusable acts of incompetence connected to proliferation of criminal activity, I did something that I guess nobody can really be qualified for until they qualify themselves. And I said that pending a repudiation of my authority, I was going to assume the role in an interim capacity of Attorney General and await the Supreme Court to provide me with a list of candidates that were qualified for Adjutant General, understanding as I did that there were acts of sedition that were then ongoing. According to the Texas Code of Military Justice, there is a 60-day period during which time the candidates for the particular roles that were eligible for invocation under that particular legal standard needed to prepare up to 60 days before they could actually assume the office. Now, when I contacted the Supreme Court, I said 30 days, and it was inaccurate insofar as it was actually by the letter of the law up to 60 days. But during that time, I did a daily report on what I understood to be necessary matters to address, including processes connected to what you could call legal strategies, actual executive actions that could be effectuated, as well as concepts of what could be considered available as legal redress in terms of pursuing some sort of judicial review or maybe even legislative implications in terms of what was going on. It also had various kinds of executive actions that were proposed. I focused in many ways on law enforcement and first responders. Amongst those reports were actual acknowledgments of what I understood to be my access to communications that were going on emergency bandwidths associated with the alleged response to Hurricane Harvey. Now, if I'm correct, there were up to 45 days worth of reports, perhaps even as much as 60. They were dated. It was IAG day and then the number. At some point, I had them on a thumb drive that I kept with me. The first thumb drive got stolen, but I had a backup and I made a second thumb drive. The second thumb drive got stolen. And all of my work, all of the IAG reports I did, all of the outlines connected to my legal strategies, including as well as evidence, my nascent biodefense system that I was in the process of attempting to develop based on a proprietary model I had. With an understanding that it would be able to provide a protection against violation of certain areas, both etherically and energetically, and could be used as a kind of a counter biohacking paradigm, which I actually implemented in a very rudimentary form for myself and discovered that the consequences of protecting myself from etheric and electronic sexual assault were so significant that somebody deemed it to be acceptable to visit violent acts of sexualized terrorism on other parts of the world as a way to address what it meant for me to implement a biodefense paradigm where I was not being constantly, violently, electronically assaulted. And this was in the course of a time frame during which I was witness to a minor child, a minor girl child, who at the time was 10 years old, and who was also my student insofar as I was homeschooling her. I witnessed what I understood to be manipulations that allowed for her to be exposed to electronic sexual violence, and I attempted to respond in kind. Now, I'm going to say, for the record, and all of the written records reflect, I did not attempt in any way, shape, or form to share or expose anybody else to elements connected to my nascent biodefense system. I was going to test it on myself first. But I believe what happened was the attorneys for the child's father did something with my presentation of my resume, on my CV, when I said acknowledged or offered myself as an expert witness in the case, and that they took that And they created a paradigm whereby they were using my human capital and litigation and things they were doing with the case to try to launder assets connected to my human capital to and through the girl so that her father and his lawyers could access it. And I was expected to cooperate in certain manners. And when I didn't, there were consequences. And so this was part of what was going on at that time. And when I effectuated that biosecurity system, that what it did is it prevented etheric assault. It prevented an actual violation of my body, including my genital regions, including my chakra areas, the areas that were specifically acknowledged. And it worked. And let me tell you, the difference was amazing. The difference was amazing while it worked. But during the time frame, it worked. Whatever was connected to me biophysiologically and or etherically electronically as part of that digital commercial paradigm that was also going along in accordance with that electronic sexual assault ended up resulting in what I was aware of at the time as 2 terrorist attacks in Syria, at least one of which involved a bridge where refugees had congregated that was allegedly attacked by a drone, and a terrorist attack in Las Vegas, where an active shooter went and shot up a country music concert in Las Vegas that I understood was actually meant to be an option executed later at a country music festival in Fort Worth, Texas. But because of the implementation of those biodefense measures that I did, that somebody called the option for that specific act of terrorism early, and the option available was Las Vegas. And so this is what was going on during the time I was compiling these IAG reports. The biodefense system I understood was up for 4 to 5 days, and it worked. But then after the third event, something happened, and somebody crashed it. Somebody, because I'd gone through a certain process of dealing, and I was real time aware of it, and I could hear them. I could hear them. They had hacked into my email. They were looking at it. I could hear what they were saying. They were calling out specific parts of the body and claiming them, the codes and the sequences associated with those particular areas, and saying, this is mine. I could hear them real time. And so this has been, part of what's been going on since then. Now, I am concerned that somebody got into that and used it for completely ulterior motives that are completely contrary to what the intent was. I think they took that and they took the systematology and they tried to make it into some sort of alleged digital banking paradigm. Now, the possibility existed for it to be an individuated, particularized biodefense system that could be individually customized. And what you did with it would have been your business. But it was never, ever intended to legitimize compulsory electronic sexual assault in accordance with expectations of commercial sexual performance. And it was certainly never meant in any way, shape, or form to be used to justify the sexual exploitation of children. Period. Never in any fucking way. There's never any excuse for that. And I believe that the terrorist who hacked me, who tortured me and tortured that woman and tortured her child in front of me at the behest of her husband's lawyers, under the acumen of the courts of these alleged judges that engaged in completely unprofessional activities under the auspices of being a judge, I believe that they had a different understanding and that they were connected to the paradigm that allowed for that to be hacked and stolen and misappropriated for completely illegal and unconscionable activities. Now, I am not certain, but I believe it may be connected to the same sort of syndicate that developed that app for the Centers for Disease Control, presumably around identification of sexually transmitted diseases. I believe that app that was compiled for and made available through the Apple Store at the very least during the fall of 2017 was being used for commercial sexual manners, that they were using it in order to effectuate a compulsory performance of sexual activity for commercial purposes under the auspices of providing some sort of STD assessment or treatment. Yeah, basically, people would have that app on their phone and they would be able to connect it to other people's biometric accounts, and they would be able to use it and access it to attempt to either compel people to engage in certain sorts of activities for commercial purposes or other purposes, and or to torture people that did not comply with or cooperate with their intentions of what they understood to be what was expected of them. I honestly believe that, and I honestly believe that that was part of exactly what they were doing during Hurricane Harvey. That they were undergoing a large scale process of forced cybernetic enhancements of people in their homes as well as people in emergency services centers, using the illusion or the delusion that it was a response to a hurricane situation in order to modify people and attenuate people to a specific kind of calibration in order to force compulsory sexual commercial performance out of people, including in their own homes.